How do you feel about what Pinny said about this not being studied by the masses? There is this famous edict that you shouldn't learn Kabbalah until you're 40. And by the way, there's Rabbi Moshe Weinberger was a big rabbi in the Five Towns, probably much more in the Kabbalistic camp. Said there's also that says 18, which is just as credible. He said, that. But what's your feeling? Should it be limited to any age, or you're now on the MG staff? How would you feel like if somebody walked in here Wednesday night one-on-one learning? By the way, 7 to 8 o'clock Wednesday night one-on-one learning. Always plugging. Somebody wants to come in, and they come in and they say, "I want to learn Kabbalah," and you see they don't really know their Aleph from a bet.
I would be in favor with a great teacher. I think that we live in a time that is desperate. There's in the Alter Rebbe's time, which was far less of a as I had a rabbi who said, back in the day, if you wanted to do a sin, you had to prepare for a month. You had to save up money. You had to buy a ticket to the big town. You had to go to the big town and go to some risque show. It was a whole to-do. Today, you just turn on your phone. So in the Alter Rebbe's time, in the little shtetls in Europe, one time, Rabbi Pinchas of Koretz, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mezrich, you would think a Hasidic master would be very pro. He was against sharing it to the masses. He felt it was for a select few. And one of the papers of the Maggid's deep, deep, beautiful teachings was in a gutter. I guess it had flown through the window, and he was enraged. Like, look at the way this is being treated, this Esser. So the Alter Rebbe wanted to placate him. And he said, there was once a king who had a son, the prince, who got ill, was sick. And he was on his deathbed. He was dying. And the doctors tried everything. One of the doctors said, "My king, I have a small opportunity to maybe heal your son, the prince. It's a long shot." He's like, anything for my son. What is it? He says, "It's going to involve your crown." He's like, "That's okay. What is it going to take?" He says, "It's going to take the crown jewel in the front of your crown. We have to take it, grind it up, take the powder, put it in a drink, and this special gem might, a drop of it might enter his mouth and might heal him." And the king said, "For my son's life, for sure." And it says Rabbi Pinchas Koretz heard this analogy and he was placated and calmed down. And the idea is the crown jewel of Torah, of God, is the mystical teachings of Judaism, is Hasidus and Kabbalah. And even though it's a risk to share it to the masses everywhere as if it's some kind of, oh, look at this cute analogy, when really the depths of it are, as you say, wait till you're 40, wait till you're older. Our generation is so sick spiritually, we're so numb to spiritual reality that I believe our bigger danger is to be numb to Judaism than it is that we might learn something that might be too esoteric. And I think it helps us wake up from slumber. And that's when the Baal Shem Tov came around, was after the Khmelnytsky massacres of hundreds of thousands of Jews were killed in Europe. And Judaism was dark, and Jews felt like so out of it. And he came to try to inspire that. And the final point to it is also regarding 40. I would say, in all honesty and in fairness to that perspective, I have noticed, and I've been learning for 20 years. I have noticed myself learning the same ideas that I did over the last 20 years in a completely new light as I've grown. Your mind matures. You're like, oh, how could I have thought of it that way? So, no question that the older you get, the more you learn. And if you just study, some people just love studying Kabbalah and nothing else. That's like taking flowers from the ground, plucking the flowers from the ground, and enjoying the flowers. It's good, but it'll die out. It has to be in the earth. It has to be within the fundamentals of Torah observance, of halacha, of Judaism as a whole. Then Kabbalah can infuse that with more inspiration. But just on its own and in a adventurous, lazy way without the proper guidance, I think would be missing the mark.
Wow. Okay. Thank you both. So,
I want to respond to that a little bit. Yeah. So first of all, that the opposition of Kabbalah for all people started with the Ramban, Nachmanides, and when the Arizal shared his teaching, his special illumination of we call modern Kabbalah with his disciples, not written down, and he made them swear on pain of death not to write this down, not to disseminate. But of course, what happened? It was written down and it was published. The Arizal was totally against that.
What do you think of Daniel's response, though?
So not every illness do you give every kind of medicine. I agree with the illness part. In other words, like for example, the fact that we're having this conversation is because thanks to the Kabbalists, the conversation of God is now, we're talking about it. In the modern Orthodox world, which we both are part of, has an illness, which is about Judaism has been reduced down to, in a very hyper-focused way of doing the ritual activity in the most perfect way. Both the Kabbalists and the Rationalists maintain you have missed the boat. Isaiah says the Jewish people are doing your Judaism in a rote, mechanical way. This is an eternal problem.
Do you think, Pinny, and this is something I think about a lot, do you think that our backgrounds, which is different than Daniel's background, do you think that unfortunately because we're not really talking about God, and we're not talking about God in this kind of way. We talk about God in a much more detached, academic way.
Yep.
That has led to a certain numbness, and that's led to a certain lack of passion and excitement, which unfortunately, and that's why someone like me, who's a product of this community, is veering towards that, and my son,
right.
and there's a Chabad house at Yeshiva University now, which is like the bastion of modern Orthodoxy, and there's like a Chabad house there. It's like, I don't even know what the analogy to that would be, but it's happening because, in my opinion, and I'm just curious if...
So I want to agree with the spiritual numbness diagnosis. Most observant Jews are dialing it in. In other words, it's basically reduced. If you're living a Jewish life as social orthodoxy, which is that there's a community and there's a ticket. You want to be in the club, you got to do the certain behaviors. And then the focus becomes focused on all the precise way. Now I have a halacha chat, so I'm not a stranger to halacha minutia here. Having said that, the Kabbalists, that there has to be a kavanah. That's the big word in Kabbalah. Focus, intention, devotion, whatever you want to call that, and the great medieval scholars, Maimonides, Nachmanides, also made it. You have to do mindful Judaism to be an activity of mindful activity. Mindful activity is the key phrase. So if you're just doing ritualistic behaviors in a thoughtless manner, it of course is going to feel dead, and then you feel like I'm a walking dry stick. So you need something. So Hasidic is the Hasidic approach has an immediate appeal. I mean, I think the Baal Shem Tov approved that quite succinctly. And in fact, the challenge, many historians say, during the time of the in other words, there was the elite scholars who were having a robust life. By the way, the Misnagdim, the posers, also agreed with Arizal. They were not rationalists in the classic sense. They were disciples of the Arizal. The Vilna Gaon wrote a commentary on the Zohar. Having said that, they shared, but the Gaon of Vilna put the Baal Shem Tov and the Baal in Cherem, in excommunication, because among things, he felt that they got the core concepts distortedly wrong, which is very destructive, and B, this is not to be shared with people, no matter what. In other words, if there are problems, just because you have a solution does not mean that is the right solution. Now, I agree with the diagnosis. Doesn't mean that we have to give them, in my view, a Judaism which is a new perspective, which as I think I've already articulated, has systemic challenges.
Just a very short story based on what you guys both were saying about modern Orthodoxy. It's because this is actually new for me. I guess my family, I would say, is modern Orthodox, and I've been around, but in San Diego, California, where I grew up, there wasn't many. Either you're few religious people or you're not religious. I've always taught, and my friends and everyone worked with are not religious whatsoever. That's what I mean when I say spiritual numbness, and I imagine it applies across the board to all of us in different gradations. Rabbi Akiva Eger was one of the great Gaonim and Rabbi geniuses in Europe. His grandson, I believe, was Rabbi Leibele Eger, who became a chassid, became a mystic. And they were not too happy with that. So the story goes that he went to the court, I believe, of the Kutzker Rebbe, and he went to visit to see what's this Hasidic mystical movement all about. So he shows up, and it's Erev Yom Kippur, just before Yom Kippur is coming in, holiest day of the year. He comes early, he starts praying, reflecting on his deeds. It's about an hour to go before Yom Kippur starts. He's in shul early, and about half an hour before Yom Kippur starts, the Hasidim there they lay a table out, and they put a ton of food and drink on it. It's like, that's strange. I mean, I get the meal before Yom Kippur, but like right before in the shul, all right, fine. And he sees them eating and talking, and they're talking about life, and they're talking about ideas. Looks at his watch, it's 15 minutes to go. And he's like, this is getting a little tight, guys. Goes down to 10 minutes. At this point, he can't contain himself anymore. He's like, I know these guys have different practices than me, but this is about as real as it gets. He walks up to them, he says, my friends, it's Yom Kippur starting. They kind of ignore him. It's about 7 minutes to go. He says, my friends, the Torah, the Torah says that you have to afflict yourselves, which we know means that you have to fast on Yom Kippur. And they look at him like, kind of pay attention. They move up, keep going. They're eating and drinking, talking. 5 minutes left. He says, my friends, it says throughout Tanakh and further in the Mishnah and in the Gemara that you have to fast on Yom Kippur. 3 minutes left. He says, in Shulchan Aruch and in the Torah and in the Acharon, the Rishonim and in the Acharonim and he starts listing all the sources where you're not allowed to eat on Yom Kippur. They still don't pay any attention. 1 minute left. He says, he's about to lose it. He says, God said that you can't eat or drink on Yom Kippur. So they turned in and quietly they said, oh, God said? And they put everything away and got ready for Yom Kippur. And the lesson they were telling him is don't get lost. Of course, we keep everything in halacha because we know that it's rooted in the Torah, which is rooted in God's will. But we can't forget the source of what we're doing when we're learning and observing the aspects and the minutiae of Judaism. It's all God's diary. It's all God's will for us to connect to him through. And that was the message that they had for him.